Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you and welcome to Islam and Life with me, Tariq Ramadan, broadcasting from London. In today's show we ask the question, how can the patience of Prophet Ayoub be applied today?
Prophet Ayub, or Job, suffered a number of calamities in his lifetime. His farm was destroyed, he was infected with a skin disease, and the roof of his house collapsed, killing many members of his family. Regardless of this, he maintained his patience and never complained. Rather, he remembered to thank Allah even at his most weakest, saying, "Truly, adversity has afflicted me, and you are most merciful of all who show mercy." The Prophet was rewarded for this and was met with the mercy of Allah, who restored his life and showered him with blessings. In a world where the Islamic faith is being targeted and attacked, this week's Islam and Life asks, how can the patience of Prophet Ayub be applied today?
Sometimes we have to come back to the Quran, to the Holy Book, and to read stories about the prophets and the messengers, peace be upon them all, and to try to understand what are the lessons that we can draw from the stories. Ayub was tested, he showed patience, and the word in Arabic is sabr, which is patience, but it's also perseverance and endurance. It's more than that. It's a very many meanings in one Arabic word, which is very important. He was facing this, understanding that he was loved by God and tested by the one who loved him. And this is a very important meaning in our life. It's not to play the victim or to carry on a victim mentality. Victimhood is not at all what is important with our faith. How can we understand the concept of the meaning of patience, sabr in Arabic, with all these dimensions? And at the same time, today in our contemporary world, we are facing negative perception of Islam, but not only outside. It's not only something that we have to do with others, it's also inside, inward dimension for us. How can we get this very understanding today, and how is it needed and why it is needed for Muslims today, and how can we improve this in every situation? Because our faith is about educating oneself, educating ourselves, educating our societies at the same time. Many questions, and to answer these questions I'm joined by my guest, life coach and author Sayyida Habib. Thank you so much for being with us today. Let me start with this very difficult, in fact it's a simple word but with many meanings, the sabr. Sabru Ayub, as it is said very often, is the patience of Ayub, and we reduce this to patience. What would be your understanding of a sabr, patience or perseverance, and how would you define this word?
That's a really interesting question and a very big one, of course. So the way that I would look at it is very much from a coaching practical perspective, because that's what I apply in my life every day, and I work with clients to do the same. And the way that we look at it, or the way I like to look at it, is that patience is actually a skill. Sabr is a skill that's developed, and it really depends on circumstances and where you are in life. So in certain circumstances, sabr might mean actually speaking up and being practical and taking action, and sometimes it might be quite the opposite. And what you mentioned earlier on about this victim mentality, one of the biggest things that comes out of that is, and this is what I've been thinking about with sabr, is that you avoid the blame game. So because when you're actually being a victim, what you're doing is you're actually blaming someone else, and you're not taking responsibility for your part in life and your part. So for example, if we just look at when I just think of the story of Prophet Ayub, just from a big perspective, what I realize is that no matter what was happening for him or to him, he was still taking responsibility for his attitude. So he was coming across with gratitude, and he was taking responsibility for how he was going to behave in relation to what was happening in his life.
Yes, I think what is important is gratitude is whatever I lost, I still have, and I thank you for what I have, and I understand the meaning of what is lost, which is standing up, trying your best to be a better human being. It's a test, and this is the trial of life, is all about this. Now, you said, and I said it at the beginning, is that we have to avoid victim mentality. I said this once in a lecture, and someone came after and said, you know what, it's all good to say victim mentality is not good, still we are victims. And he was a black man facing racism, saying we are victims. So what is your answer to this? If we don't want the victim mentality and we want to show patience, is patience accepting or patience mean resisting?
Depends on the circumstances. That's a very good question, because sometimes it is about acceptance, because acceptance actually frees us up. Like, for example, if something is going wrong in my life, like if I've got an illness, God forbid, or somebody is ill, what happens is if they constantly resist that illness, it's not about doing nothing to help yourself, but if you're constantly resisting or saying, why do I have it, why should I have it, I shouldn't have it, it shouldn't be this way, what happens is it keeps us in that same loop, right? And all I keep doing is I keep saying I shouldn't, and what that stops me from doing is becoming free and taking action that could actually help me. Because if I could say, okay, I accept this circumstance, this is what's going on, it allows me to take a breath and go, okay, now what do I do? What do I need to do to change it, develop it, fix it, whatever. So acceptance is a great part of sabr as well, because it gives us that freedom to think and to explore, right? And in the same way, if we're looking at the blame game, victim, the opposite is the blame game. So what I'm doing is, if I'm being a victim, I'm blaming somebody else. So what I'm doing is I'm actually giving all my power to that person. That person made me feel this way, that person made me think that way, that person made me, etc., etc. But actually what really happened is the person behaved a certain way, like people do, and often they behave in ways that we would not hope for or expect, especially in today's life. We all have circumstances, both personal and in the bigger picture. But what we can tend to do is, okay, if people are behaving this way, or a situation is like this, what can I be accountable for? I can be accountable for my attitude and my response.
But that's it's very interesting, because when we are facing nature, or when we are facing life, natural circumstances, and you have a disaster, or you have a natural catastrophe, or flood, and everything is okay. Sabr means accepting, means okay, now I'm trying to cope with the reality, even if you are losing a kid or a relative, that's okay. Now when it comes from human beings, when you are facing oppressors, when you are facing people coming and say, okay, so Ayub was facing the reality of nature, and he was nurturing this, and still thanking the one, and still coping with reality. When we are facing injustices, and we are facing unfair treatment, what is the meaning of sabr here?
Well, the way that I would look at it is that it is the hardest form of challenge, first of all, because that's the time when you have, what we do is we have expectations. We are creatures of expectations, right? So obviously we have expectations for our life from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but then we also have hopes from how other people would treat us. And when other people let us down or disappoint us, it's much, much harder, right? So in that sense, you have to kind of practice in another element, which is forgiveness, which is a whole other subject altogether. But just succinctly, the way that I would say it is, forgiveness is not condoning bad behavior. So if somebody is unjust or unfair to us, it's not like saying, we turn the other cheek and it's okay. It's not that, but it's really looking at it from a whole different perspective, which is saying, okay, this happened and they did this and it was unacceptable. It's unacceptable to be treated this way. However, I need to let this go in order to move on with my life.
So shall we forgive and let it go, or resist and forgive afterward?
Well, forgive and let it go would allow us to then take action, right? So forgiveness actually just means letting go. It doesn't mean that you condone the behavior or you say it's okay to do it to me again. It's really saying, okay, this happened. I'm now going to say that it was unacceptable. I'm going to grieve over it, but I'm going to put it behind me, and I'm going to look at, okay, now what do I need to do to protect myself so it doesn't happen again?
Okay,
so it allows you to take action.
That's interesting.
And I talk a lot about forgiveness in the book, by the way.
Okay, but that's good. But let me tell you, if you are, for example, a Palestinian now, and you are facing oppression, you let it go and you forgive, what do? with the situation. When you are facing oppression, they
You know
need
that-
patience.
yeah.
They need patience
Yes.
today, and we are saying patience, but patience doesn't mean to give up.
No.
So what would be the answer here?
So the other answer, like I was saying right in the beginning, was that patience allows you to also look for opportunities for action. The only way you can do that is giving up the blame game. So you say, okay, this is going on, this is oppression, this is unjust. I stand up for it. You're not supposed to just accept anything that happens
Yeah.
to you. That's not the point. But the point is to really look at, okay, what can I do to help myself here? What's in my control? So there's that whole other element of looking at, you know, when you can get out of that victim mentality, the only way you can do that is by looking at focusing on what is in your control. So when you are in, I mean, you know, I can't put myself in those situations because every human being is in their own challenges, and some people are facing such huge challenges at this moment, and my empathy goes to them. And I can't possibly say that, oh, there's one easy solution, because there isn't. And I wouldn't be so bold as to say that. But what I would say is that if you can actually say, okay, here's the situation, how can I focus in on what's in my control?
Yes,
And
which
there's
is an
a-
important point. What
Yeah.
is in your control is, in fact, not to confuse patient with being passive. but
Exactly.
being
It allows
yeah.
you to actually be active. And you know, in the book, the book that I wrote is called Life Coaching for Muslims, which I was just showing you, Discover the Best in You. There's a whole chapter on it, on letting go and forgiveness and all of this. And I talk a lot about strategies that allow you, practical strategies that actually allow you to let things go and to forgive and to look at what's in my control now. What can I do? You know, what can I do to change my circumstance?
So these are circumstances that are, you know, transhistorical. We find them everywhere. It was during the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Now in our life, now we are facing new challenges, and we in the clip we are talking about the negative perception of Muslims in our life today within the communities. We are talking about very nice values, very traditional values. If you look at the situation within the communities around the world, the situations are very, very difficult. Muslims are facing a very difficult time. Now, if you come to this, in which way they can rely on the story of Ayub, but even on the concept to face the problems of our time? What is needed in the concept of patience for the Muslims today?
That's again a very, very big question. The way that I would say it is, first of all, look at yourself. I mean, as an individual, the way I would approach it personally is look at the example that I am. Number one. So whatever situation I'm in, like I'm living in the Western world and, you know, interacting in the media and doing all of these things. So then I have to think, okay, what is my duty here? How am I, first of all, presenting my faith, and who am I? So, you know, when we come across people who are going to be oppressive or rude or not understanding, it's like, how do we approach them back? What is our behavior like? So, for example, if somebody is being defensive or rude, am I going to be defensive back? Is that going to achieve my outcome? Right? So this is again where we focus in on what we can control, because on a global level, it's difficult to think, okay, what difference can I make, right? But if I look at my life on an individual level, there are interactions that we're having every day that perhaps we can make a difference. And the biggest difference is to, first of all, know ourselves, know what kind of image we want to portray. And when it comes down to it, if we're faced with oppression or negativity, looking at, okay, how can I educate? How can I turn this paradigm around? Look at the opportunity in the challenge. And when moments happen, it's sometimes difficult. Like, for example, if somebody says something to you on the tube in London or whatever, but you look at those circumstances and you go, okay, this happened. Maybe I didn't respond the way that I would have liked to. I didn't like the way that I responded. So you learn from it. You learn from it. And what we can do on a global level is look at how we are on an individual level. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Yes, the question that we may have coming from people at the grassroots level saying that's all fine, these are very good words. Real life is quite different. When we have people, you know, Islamophobia is a reality day in, day out in our life today. The negative perception is there. So if you look at what is under your control, as you said at the beginning, which is something that, okay, what can I do? Very often the way some are using the concept of patience is just don't react.
Don't do anything.
Go as far as to compromise. Now, Islam is not about this,
No.
and patience is not about that. And this is why I said at the beginning, it's also perseverance. It's also, to be patiently active and not the other way around. So what could be your advice when people are facing, such criticisms about their religion, about who they are, what is said, and we have now populism everywhere, far-right groups. Not only here, if you go to Muslim majority countries, divisions within, Muslims being very judgmental towards one another. So how can we come to the source of patience to try to find our way?
Again, I'll go back to what I was just saying. I think it really comes down to you yourself as an individual, because at the end of the day, it really is about each and every human being facing the challenges on their own, as well as, if you're talking about the grassroots levels, that's the way that I understand it. So it's really looking at, first of all, going within yourself and appreciating where you are in the journey.
But how do you do that? How can you do
this? By
how can you
exploring.
improve? How can you improve your way of being patient? Some people are saying, by
one of the
nature,
one of the things that I love, in coaching, especially in the work that I do, is we scale everything. So on a scale of 1 to 10. So for example, if you're going to sit there and really look at how patient you are, scale it. And you go, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best that I could possibly be, where am I right now in this moment? As I'm listening to this conversation, where am I right now? You might say, I'm at a 1 or a 2. And then you say, how do I know? How am I behaving in my life and my day-to-day interactions that I know that I'm at this level? Then you sit down and think, what would I need to do to improve it? And everyone has to set their own target. So for example, if I realize that maybe, I lost my temper at a loved one, or I said something to my parents that I shouldn't have said, or perhaps somebody at work was, goading me or being judgmental and I didn't respond. Day-to-day examples will give us a lot of information about where we are.
But listening to you, it's very much you looking at yourself. It's an intimate dialogue that you have. While that's fine, but when we come to all what we have in the Quran, we were talking about Ayub. Ayub, we are in our education also relying on models. We know that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was our model. He was our educator. So how can we take advantage of all these stories? Is there something that we can get out of this to improve our patience, or is it be alone, look at yourself, improve yourself? It could be difficult.
But first of all, the thing is that the role models are our inspiration, right? That's why we're talking about this whole subject, because Prophet Ayub is our inspiration. When we look at how he practiced gratitude, we think, that's a possibility. So if he could do it, it's possible for me. Where am I right now? Because unless I don't look at changing my own reactions, it is really a domino effect. So if I, for example, am more patient with other members of my family or my loved ones or my community or whatever, it is a ripple effect. So you do actually end up making a difference. I've seen it time and time again with people that I've worked with. They're surprised at the results that they have on a bigger level, because actually they made the change within themselves, and that actually goes out and manifests in other areas of their life and with other people. So you really do have to have that intimate dialogue with yourself. And I'll keep going back to that, because it really is about change starts from within. And it really starts with you looking at yourself and going, let's scale it. Let's be practical. Let's look at practical areas of my life.
So you said first you look at yourself, you scale.
You begin
whatever,
there.
Yes, you begin there. Now, we have stories, we have examples, we have models, we have role models in the scriptural sources, but also in our contemporary life. We have, teachers and
we have
scholars
books.
and books. And then the second step, how can you go to the second step? How would you say when people are facing rejection from people who don't like Muslims or facing, catastrophes, the second step? So to start with this, it's okay. Now I want to improve. I want to change. How can I get this patience, which is something which is a gift, because this is the way you are going to deal with your life. This is the way you are going to deal with anything which is happening to you. It's to be able to acknowledge that you are hurt and to be spiritually be strong in a spiritual term, to say thank you still. So how can you go to the second step to improve?
Well, the first step is asking the question. So the first step is asking, what do I want? And what does patience mean to me? So you define it for yourself.
So no academic definition.
No, it cannot be academic, really, because you have academic definitions, but manifestations are your own. So it's very much looking at, okay, where am I in my life? How am I actually, what does patience mean to me? It really is about, what does it mean to me? How do I define it? Because I could define it as a skill. Somebody else could define it as something completely different. Somebody else could think, okay, it's just something that's given to me. But then you're in a whole different level, because then it's not in your control at all, right? So it's very much about the individual going, okay, defining it for myself, and then going, okay, now what are the steps that I need to take in order to develop it? And that is really about the practical, kind of bare bones kind of work, which is where you go, okay, this is what I need to do, and this is how I'm going to do it, and this is how I'm going to get someone to help me, and this is how I'm going to measure it, and things like that. And that's when you actually come down to going, okay, I can actually scale and measure my progress. So 6 months down the line, you go back and you do the scale again, for example. I mean, this is what I do with clients all the time, right? And I've given a lot of guidance in the book doing that, because it's very much about practical
So
steps.
the definition, there is no normative definition.
Exactly.
Everyone has his definition. Second, the steps are specific to everyone, so we don't have the same steps.
Exactly,
And
because
still
we're
we
all
speak-
individuals.
So yes, and we still speak about the same
Same
patience,
thing, yeah.
same perseverance. So if now we are talking about the fact that what you are saying, which is very important, which is the essence of our religion, of Islam, is that not only patience is required, but you can improve, you can educate yourself. It comes through prayers, it comes through Ramadan, fasting, it comes through anything.
Action,
All
communication.
actions are, and communication, everything that you do can be a means to get more patience and perseverance in your life. If we look at the situation of Muslims today, and you are working with people, training and all this, would you say that Muslims lack patience?
That's a generalization, right? And a very dangerous one. I'm not going to.
So
I'm not going to make it.
I want you to respond to that.
I will only say that some people could be more patient. Some are, some are not. I'm not going to generally say that. I think sometimes what I would be so bold as to generalize is sometimes we can go into a bit of a defensive position on a bigger level because of everything that's happening. So we need to the individual needs to look at themselves and see, okay, how can I really make a difference here?
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. I think that what we were trying to define, which is important at the beginning, is that there is no one definition. Still, when we come to the Quran, there is a definition, understanding with our models, with the prophets. Now, what is important is to take all these stories and to come to ourselves and to try to understand it for ourselves. The definition, the steps, knowing that it's not a requirement only, but it's something that we can improve, because this is the very meaning of our faith. That's all we have time for. Please let us know your thoughts and views on any of the shows we have seen, and here is the way to contact us.
Islam and Life welcomes your opinion. So please send us your suggestions as well as criticism on any of the shows you've seen or would like to see. You can share your thoughts with other Islam and Life fans, engage with debate, and view past shows on our social media platforms. Tweet us at Islam and Life TV, or join us on Facebook by liking our page Islam and Life on Press TV.
Finally, I would like to thank my guest, Sayyida Habib. Thank you so much for your presence and your input, and I hope to see you next week, inshallah.